In this course, I will show you how to create high-quality textures that you see in modern games, in style similar to projects from Riot Games and Blizzard. I will guide you through the entire process, from basic colors, art fundamentals, detailing your texture, gradients, and final touches. Also, I prepared a 3D model for you so you can follow along. You can find it in our Discord. So the course is pretty intense, especially after first half, and I don't suggest to skip any part of it because every other minute I try to share useful information. Hope you like it. First of all, let's start with this Softer Substance Painter. Make sure you have set up like this. It's pretty easy to make. Here you can click on Windows and you can check all of them. We need texture set list, texture set settings. Make sure your materials, all of these spheres, are in the bottom. You can drag all of them, you can place them whenever you want. In my opinion, this is the best setup. I have properties here, layers on the right, and here I will have my 3D model. Let's go to File, New, and we need to select the 3D model itself. Select this FBX file, double click on it. Here you can choose resolution, and I prefer to have it on 2K. This is regular one for Gamedev. Then we go to Import Baked Maps, and we need to select all of the maps. Select all of them, press Open, and then press OK. That's it. And guys, sometimes if you have symmetry on the model, you need to disable this setting. Here we can see the model itself without all the maps. We can paint on top, because here we have our first layer. This is basically paint layer. So we have two types of layers here. Fill, you can click on this button to edit. And then we have paint layer, where we can basically paint on top. On fill layer, we can fill the entire surface, for example, with any kind of material. It will look very weird. Yeah, just like this. Okay, so let's remove all of them. Let's go to texture set settings and select all of the maps that we have. Click on normal, select normal OBJ, then ID map, ambient occlusion, same for AO. Of course, we need to have curvature, and then we need to have position. We don't have it, so we need to bake it. Let's go to bake mesh maps. Here you can see all of these maps. You need to uncheck all of them and select only position. Click on Bake Selected Textures and return to Paint mode. Now we have it. Don't forget that this model is provided in our Discord. Also guys, make sure you feel comfortable in the viewport itself. And then I switch from material mode to base color. We will work only here. Then I will search for Simple Diffuse. This is my custom plugin, and I will apply it right away in the layers. And you can see it will get this beautiful result. So we have color base, and now we can quickly change colors however we want. Before changing colors like this, let's take a look at our reference. So here we have it. So we use Pure Ref program to navigate through our references and to collect all of them in one file. And this is essential for any artist in Gamedev. And we have an option to pick the color right from the concept. But before picking your colors, you need to understand few things. First of all, this is final illustration. This is a huge mistake to pick colors right from it and don't change them later. So let's say I can pick any random color. You can see because this is illustration, it has all the final shadows, all the final lightning and particles on it. So literally I can pick any of these colors, and few of them will be too bright. You can see the feeling of the wood is completely different from what we see here. That's why I don't suggest to pick colors if you're beginners. Also, right next to this color, you can pick something like this. It will be too dark. That's why it's very confusing for people, because they take a look at the final illustration and they compare it to their results. Our goal is to find color in between, the most neutral, not bright, not dark color. I think it will be color like this, even though I can see that this is kind of gray. Let's start with this one. At least the value itself is neutral. It's not dark, it's not too bright. Only then I need to change saturation itself. You can see right now it doesn't look too saturated, it doesn't look like a wood at all. Our goal is to change the hue here. Let's tweak it closer to yellow. And then let's make it more saturated like this. Now this is what we want. And I'm telling this to my students that it's literally impossible to pick colors perfectly right from the concept. You need to tweak it a bit. In most cases, you need to make it a bit more saturated in this range. And it's very important that color base will be a bit darker. Here you can see a final illustration with all of the light, but in your case, you will need to paint all the highlights and additional details later, so make sure to pick a bit darker color. Yeah, it's completely fine to change it a lot. a bit brighter, a bit darker. In Simple Diffuse, we have lots of the settings, like changing color for the shadows, but in my opinion, by default, they're completely fine. Color for ambient occlusion, we can control ambient occlusion like this. I think it's cool. We can increase it a bit. I think everything else is great here. We have lots of settings. We can also control the light. We can add secondary light. Simple Diffuse is pretty straightforward. And then you can rename this layer. And then press Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V to copy this layer and name it Metal. Then we need to right click on this layer. We need to add a black mask. This way we won't see anything. And then right click on this mask and add color selection. This way, based on ID mask, we can select this metal. And now let's go back to diffuse layer, click on this one, and then we can change color how we want. We can make it a bit brighter, we can change it like this. Notice that in this case, we have pretty warm shadows, like this shadow and ambient occlusion is actually red. So that's not a good idea. Let's change the preset to rock. This way we'll have cold shadows everywhere. Yep, I like it, and I can change the color quickly. Now I have a small problem. I can make my color darker, but this top part for some reason doesn't get darker at all. So we need to go down to gradient, and let's make this top gradient less brighter. Yep. Also, let's go to base light and let's reduce it to something like 0.1 or even less. Now we don't have huge contrast between shadows and light, and this is great for the color base. Then I go to base color. I will make the main color even darker, like this one. Guys, remember that we are texturing for modern AAA games. Usually it's Handpaint PBR pipeline, so later we can have additional maps like metallic, roughness. These maps will make glossiness and they will make the entire texture darker. So this is another reason not to use any colors like this on your color base. Keep it in this range. I will leave it like this, you can even copy it. Now we can clearly see that this wood is for some reason fucking red. So our goal here is to reduce a bit of saturation, shift it closer to yellow or to orange, like this. Then make it even more darker. Now the source is just trust me bro, so you need to have this feel. I think the feel of the color base is pretty close. Now let's go back to metal and we will need to make shadows a bit more saturated. Yeah, it makes a difference. I only change saturation. You can tweak some of these settings, for example light, to make wood more volumetric. Yep, this way it's actually way better. Yeah, it's more readable for the viewer. But now obviously we need to change this light, it's too bright. Yeah, let's put it. This is actually a very important stage. On this point you don't need to rush. So I noticed that this light for some reason is too bright right now. So let's reduce it even more. And on some point you just need to stop. In my opinion, this is the perfect color base. It's a bit darker as it should be. I noticed that we have this weird light from the bottom actually. So let's copy this layer. Right click, add a black mask, then I'll right click, add paint. Here you can select few options, fill by polygons, fill by UVs. I will select this option and I will just click. By the way, in small preview you can see our mask. Let's go back to the color and let's pick the light only for this one. Okay, now we can see small difference. This side is filled more with the light. It kind of makes sense. And only now we can save our file. Press Ctrl S. Actually, you need to make it in the beginning, but who cares? So on my daily work, it's so fast, I don't even save these files, to be honest. Then we need to export the texture. Go to File and Export Textures. Click on this material, then click on this button and check everything. Select only color. Go back to Global Settings, click on this, and here you can choose your path. Select any folder you want and click on Export. And that's it. You can install Simple Diffuse on our Gumroad. I will leave the link in the description. There we also have tutorial about all of these settings. Now guys, let's talk a bit more about the theory of the color base and why is it important to make it just a bit darker, because in the next step we will need to detail all of these curvature lines that we had from Substance. They're pretty procedural and they're literally straight. You can see this is first stage, color base, and then we have second one, more detailed. And only then I pushed it even more with additional colors and additional gradients. And it's way easier to start with a bit darker values and increase them gradually. The same way illustration works, we usually start with darker values and we add more volume with light. Now I want to show you one Sigma moment from one of my students, Daniel. So even though in 1 month we pushed his results a lot, you can see this one is pretty good and detailed. We started with a bit darker colors, and even after this, like most of the students, he made the same mistake with color base. Usually I need to fix it at least 3 times. Take a look at this stage. At first glance it's completely fine, but if we move on through the process, it will be way harder to paint on it. So this is example of the color base that could ruin your process. It should be a bit darker like this. This way you will have more space to paint additional highlights. And only then on personal sessions I explain this process step by step, how to paint eye. And currently he is on this stage and you can see how detailed it looks like, but if you started with bright color base, it will be way harder. So if you're interested in full training or training with mentorship, feel free to check description as well. Now guys, we can finally move on to the next stage. Our next step will be texturing in 3D code, and unfortunately or luckily, this is the only useful software for texture painting. Of course, you can try other software like Substance Painter or Blender. You can even follow along the course, but I can tell you right away, 3D code is way faster and more comfortable. And this is just how it works. Every professional texture artist uses 3D code and Photoshop for texturing. Of course, this is not a paid promotion. I won't provide any affiliate links. On their website, you have only 2 options, 3D code and 3D code texture. If you want to save money, basically it's the same as 3D code, but only for texturing. I think not many people know about 3D code texture, and it will be important information because it's only for texturing. And I suppose if you're a student, you can install it for free or ask your university for this. You just need to provide proofs. Basically it's the same for any other software. First of all, we need to select 3D code correctly. I have regular version. I think it's a bit better. Sometimes I use Retopo here. First of all, we need to disable these 2 options, except opacity. This is very important. Disable steady stroke. Here you can control size of your brush. Make sure to disable any kind of grid. X is here. Also make sure this cube looks like this. It means that you're in perspective mode. And then you need to set up background. Let's go to camera, background, and select colors for the background gradient. Choose top color, and here with hue, saturation, lightness, you can control the values. So I think this is ideal. Make sure it's not that bright. This is completely wrong. This is as well. Top color should be a bit brighter than bottom one, like this. Okay. And then we need color for the bottom gradient. I prefer to have it a bit more saturated and a bit darker. That's very important. In 3D code, you can play around with these menus. You can drag them. So this one, paint objects, just 3D models in your scene. Of course, we need it. Let's put it here somewhere. Yep. Then we have color palette. This one is the most important one. Make sure to have your color palette and layers menu below. If for some reason you don't see these menus, go to Window, Panels, and here you can check all of them. Now we need to take our model and drag it to the viewport. Click on first option, import for pixel painting. Here you only need to change this texture resolution if you want. I prefer to have it on 2K by default. Click on OK. Navigation here is a bit different. I prefer to have it by default. You can hold middle mouse button, you rotate around, you hold left mouse button and right mouse button to zoom. And on this stage, we finally need to use our graphic tablet. So we use the pen and button on the pen to navigate around. I can hold front button on the pen to zoom in and out pretty easily. I hold Alt key and button on the pen to move around. If you haven't used it before, it will take you some time, and that's completely fine. It's actually pretty comfortable. And 3D code is the easiest software you can ever learn. Once we have our model, we need to go to Textures, Import, and select our color base. Here we have it. Now we are in training mode, and in order to see it properly, we need to press on 2. And right now we are in color mode. If you want to see wireframe, you need to press 4 and 4 once again to hide it. And if you want to go back to shading, actually you don't need it at all in 3D code, you can press 5. So 2 for the color, this code unlit mode, mode without any light. Make sure you press on 2 and you see something like this. Here in the layers menu, you can add new layer, you can name it how you want. You can change the blending mode the same way as in Photoshop. I don't suggest to add any folders in 3D code, and I don't suggest to use other languages except English, because it might delete some of your layers. Let's say we'll pick this color by pressing on V. You can see this tiny line from the curvature. Okay, let's pick it, and let's just paint a bit. I'll paint just a bit like this. Right now I'm improving this texture a bit, and you can change opacity. Yep, you can add new layers. You can have it on overlay. You can paint anywhere with overlay like this. And then, yeah, feel free to play around. It's completely fine to start with small steps. Just to play around with this, try to get at least a few of the brush strokes. In 3D code, I use this third brush. I know other people use second one for some reason, but third is kind of universal. So your brush should look like this. You can see this is slight pressure, then I can press hard, and I can even control the opacity this way. If your brush doesn't work correctly, this is how you can fix all of your tablet issues. First, you create a new text document, ps user config, and inside of this document you need to write use system style 0. Then you need to put this document into this folder, and only then you need to go to tablet properties. In my case, it's vacuum properties, and you need to disable window sync. I'm not sure why, but any new tablet has weird painting issues, and sometimes solution depends on the tablet. The shortcut for the brush is B, of course. You can paint, you can press on E to go to eraser. At first stages you probably won't use it a lot. Here you can change opacity of the eraser. Sometimes it's very cool to add the gradients like this. Very soft. Now let's set up connection with Photoshop. This will be very important. First, you need to install Photoshop or Krita. Then you go to Edit, Preferences, In, Out, and here choose your Photoshop.exe file. Press on Apply and OK. And then you need to press on Ctrl P. This will open Photoshop automatically. I suggest to set up Photoshop the same way. Here I have layers on the right and I have channels. That's literally it. I don't need anything else. On the left I have color palette. Then I have list of all the brushes. I use only this one, soft, pressure, opacity, basically regular brush with these settings. To be honest, doesn't really matter. If you think that your brushes are wrong, it might be, but in most cases it's just tablet issues. You can see this layer of the color base. Let's rename it. This is new layer. We can paint anything here. Let's say we'll pick new color from the color palette, pick this one, a bit brighter, and we'll paint some additional damage. It's great to paint on Photoshop on top because you can see the entire model on the UVs. And sometimes it's not that comfortable to rotate the model around. Some people can texture the entire stuff in Photoshop, especially if you have experience in illustration. Based on these corners and all of the lines that we got from the substance, I'll paint some highlights, stylized patterns like this. This is before and this is after. On this pattern I can add new layer, I can paint anything and press Ctrl S. In 1 second I will get all of these layers in 3D code. For example, I can use eraser here to remove it. Press Ctrl P if you want to update texture. Don't forget to make it. It will automatically open Photoshop and press on update. To be honest guys, if I wanted to make it real quick, I will paint the entire texture here because I don't want to kind of rotate this model around. So I will basically paint everything in Photoshop. I will pick this color of the highlight. I will make it a bit brighter, a bit less saturated. We'll talk about this in a second. Instead of having one tiny boring line that we have here, I will paint something like this with my own technique. Then I will press Ctrl S and it's working pretty fast. Here we have it. In under 1 minute I added these small accents and you can see right away it looks more detailing, and that's why you need to make your color base a bit darker. I use these sliders, so pick this color, make it a bit brighter. And then you need to make it warmer, because in our world sun is warm and sky, the field environment, is blue. That's why we are having warm highlights and cold shadows. Once again, pick it, get used to these sliders, make it a bit warmer, closer to this yellow. Change the size of your brush with square brackets. I learned this way and in my opinion it's pretty fast. And then let's say we can paint any type of highlights on the curvature. We can finally see some of the wood patterns. And now guys, you need to understand, ready code is very useful for painting harder patterns and Photoshop for softer. I have very specific technique of painting. First of all, you don't paint with any of the constant line like this. You paint with sharp directional moves. Locate your elbow comfortably as you can. In my case, it's almost horizontally and it's laying on the table. And then you need to learn color cutting technique so you can have any brushstrokes like this. Let's say they're kind of messy. Only then press on V to pick neighbor color, and with short round moves, you can cut it. So let's pick it and let's cut it this way. Let's pick this light color once again, paint, pick neighbor color, cut it. This way is great for beginners. If you don't have much experience in painting, you can create stylized patterns pretty quickly. Here we have this corner, yeah? Let's pick this color, increase the brightness. Also remember guys, every light is a bit less saturated, just take it as a rule. And then you need to make it warmer. In this case, you need to shift it here, closer to this sky blue color. And let's paint something like this. Pretty raw, yeah? And you can pick neighbor color, and then you can cut it like this. You can see it doesn't require much time or effort. And if I take it on the next level, I will constantly change the size of the brush. I will make a small glow from this highlight. Here I painted a bit on the wrong edge. You can press on 4 to check it. Let's pick this color and let's cut it this way. Yep, we could get something like this. So don't expect to get these quick results right away. It takes some time and practice to get used to it. Actually, I will remove it right now. It was some kind of small flex on beginners. Yep, and let's start with light theory. But before this, save your file. I want to give you a few useful takes on light theory. First of all, you need to understand that in order to form any kind of volume, you need to have shadow and light. Doesn't matter what you want to paint. If you don't see any good results, volumetric results, it's simply because you don't have light and shadow. In most cases, to paint any kind of new details, first we add shadows, let's say like this on the sphere. Then we add light side, so basically light that will come from above. I will pick color of this highlight and I will paint something like this. And you can see this way we kind of have the crack on this sphere. Yeah, I can paint something more. And we have the same in Handpaint. Any kind of additional detail, imperfection, pattern is formed with shadow, a bit of shadow and light. In Handpaint, you can actually change the shape of your highlight however you want, of course, based on the surface. So let's say if this is kind of a lava sphere, we can have something like this. Or if it's a rocky, it could be more rectangular. It's completely fine to have this rectangular highlight to break the surface like this. Let's take a look at this difference. If we go on these terms, they are pretty simple. We have highlight, the brightest accumulation of light. We have light, yep, it's basically light. Halftone, it's between shadow and light. Then we have shadow, the darkest place on the object. We have reflected light, light that will come from any other neighbor object. So this object, like this plane, will collect the information from the light source. And then it will lit the neighbor objects, like this sphere. In this case, yep, light is coming from above. It will touch this part, of course, and it will lit the bottom of the sphere. This way in the bottom we have a bit of light. Then of course we have cast shadow. We don't usually add it in Handpaint. And we have ambient occlusion. We add it a lot. Ambient occlusion is basically the dark place between the connection of different materials. We can add it with polygonal lasso and literally with dark blue color or black color. Like this is example of ambient occlusion. And that's it for basic light theory. I don't really get when experienced artists try to explain physics, very complex, useless stuff for complete beginners. Guys, that's not very important. First of all, you need to start with spheres like this. Here I have a small breakdown on how I painted it. Let's try to paint a very simple sphere, and this way you will learn a bit more tools and color theory. First, you need to create a new layer in Photoshop. Then you need to use this polygonal lasso tool and make a selection for the plane in perspective. It will look like this. Press on enter. For some reason I can't press on enter. Okay, let's connect it. And then press on G to go to bucket tool, or you can select it. Open your color palettes and let's select very saturated red color. It will be a bit darker in the middle, yeah. Click on L, or go back to your selection, right click and deselect. Yep, here we have it. Then create new layer, use this selection, round one, hold shift in order to make perfect circle. Fill it the same way with green color. Press on G or bucket tool and pick color like this. You can see this is our mid-tone color in between. This sphere right now is too bright. Let's make it a bit darker and even a bit colder. Shift the hue, this slider, closer to blue. Yep, maybe even more darker. And then we need to save this selection. We can add new layer for demonstration. Press on B to select brush. Pick this color. With Photoshop we need to select colors with Alt. I know it might be a bit overwhelming because 3D Code and Photoshop are different, but if you take it step by step, don't rush, it will be pretty easy. So let's pick this color, then let's actually select this color closer to yellow. Let's just shift it and make it brighter. Of course, we need to select color for the lights and a bit less saturated. Then we use regular soft brush and we just need to press once, or okay, in my case I have lower opacity, so let's press multiple times in the top. If you remove selection, we'll get something like this. Great. Then let's pick this color. Let's add shadow, the darkest place on our sphere, basically in the bottom. Pick this color, make it colder, the opposite way, make it darker and a bit more saturated. Shadows are always a bit more saturated, and you don't even need to paint on this sphere like this. You can paint outside of the selection. It's also very important to understand how it works. Yep, let's add it like this. Now go back to highlights, pick this color. Let's make it even warmer, a bit brighter, less saturated, and then we reduce size of the brush. You can also make it here or with square brackets, or you can right click and change size here, but I suggest to use square brackets. And let's press a few times like this and one more time. We can even blend it together. We can have something like this. If you remove selection, it looks pretty solid for the start. You can call this layer light shadow, layer below you can call plane. Let's add new layer above every other and call it reflected lights. Now of course we need to add light from the plane. Light will touch this plane, it will collect some energy and it will reflect light on the sphere and also the color. So let's pick it, let's make this a bit brighter and paint here, and of course you need to keep the flow of the sphere. Let's paint like this, literally on the shadow. And then I suggest to have small touch reflection from the sky. So sky usually this color, we can literally pick this color and we can add this kind of rim light on the sphere. You don't even need to paint on the sphere like this. You can add small outline that will define the silhouette. Looks pretty nice. I have it on this sphere as well. It could look pretty interesting. It's kind of artistic touch, and this is the difference without reflected light and with. And then let's add new layer for ambient occlusion. Let's call it AO and move it above the plane, so below the sphere. Then for ambient occlusion you can have dark blue color. In paint we can use purple. In our world this is almost black because ambient occlusion means no light at all. Between the connection of the materials we don't get any light, and we can paint it like this with soft brush. It will look great, and the difference is huge. You can see it right away. And finally we can add cast shadow. You can add new layer, paint it manually, or you can select regular lasso, have selection like this. Yeah, it will take some time. Increase size of your brush and literally tap once or a few times. Then remove the selection and you'll get nice soft results like this. It's very important to use bigger size of the brush. By the way, this is how it will look like. I will just tap once and you can see with this selection I can get this nice result. We'll use it as well. It's also very useful for painting grass. Let's say I will make a selection like this. This will be a grass sphere. And then I can pick warmer color and I can literally press once. Yep, and it will be very cool. And then you can have another layer of grass. And this is more experienced technique. Pick this color, make it even brighter, even warmer. Press once again. Yep, you can get something like this. It's very hard to explain everything in one video. In this specific course, I'm a bit in a rush. If you want to learn the entire profession from scratch, feel free to check my free webinar in the description. Of course, you don't need to paint these grass. It's only for demonstration, and I really suggest you to try these spheres in Photoshop. Once you paint the spheres, you need to move on to more complex objects and you need to learn how to blend your colors. Literally, by using soft brush or bigger size of the brush and constantly picking different colors, you can blend them. So this is the mistake that people usually make, like this weird outline on the texture. Instead, we can pick this color, basically the light, and we don't need to have this one straight line. We just need to blend it together. Then I can pick main color, increase size of the brush, and with slight pressure, I can blend all of them together. If you see something like this, so this color pick, it means I'm picking neighbor colors and I'm slightly pressing. And then you need to understand that every object has its own unique light and shadow sides or faces. So in this case, you can't paint highlight with straight line like this. On the top, we clearly have one side. Yep. Then we have side on the left, on the right, and in the bottom. Let's pick this light color from the top. Now we kind of have this side, and every side should have its own unique gradient based on the light placement. So light will come from above, it will reach this edge first, and then it will spread along the surface. If you have something like this, your first step is to define all of these sides and blend values in between. Let's have something like this. Let's actually put some light in these dark spots. This is the difference. This is completely wrong, and this is correct. We have light actually everywhere, even here in the shadow, because this dark spot, like this one field color, means no light at all, and this is pretty bad. And great news, guys, if you have this model with paint maps, you created color base, you already have light and shadow in correct places. You don't need to paint shadows once again. You don't need to paint any kind of big reflected light. You only need to work with highlights. And these are basically accumulations of light in the sharpest corners. Let's pick this color, make it a bit brighter, a bit warmer in this case. Yep. And let's put it like this in the corners. These are these corners. You can see they will go like this. Instead of having them like a straight line or a dot, we'll make them stylized. We'll pick this color, we'll blend it together with the surface. So it actually looks like a rock pattern. It will be way bigger. And eventually you'll get something like layers of the highlights. You can see one layer, second one, and even third one. Same for this. This is front part. It's not that bright as part on the top, but you still need to have highlights. They will be just a bit darker. Let's blend them together. And eventually we'll have something like this. And this is difference before and after. Hope it helps, and we can finally move on to our model. Now we can implement all of the principles in 3D code, and I will start from scratch. I will actually remove all of these layers, and we call it detailing stage. We need to add new layer here. Let's zoom a bit closely, pick this color, make it a bit brighter with these sliders, a bit warmer, even less saturated. And first I will start painting slightly. And right away I will blend two colors together. I will pick this neighbor color, I will paint on top of it, and this way we can achieve very subtle value like this. Big mistake that you can make is to pick color from the concept. For example, this white highlight. It will look like this. And try to paint something like this. But the problem that we need to increase all of the details gradually. And first of all, we need to work only with the curvature. Actually, you can literally pick this color from the curvature. You can see it right here in the edge. It's a very tiny line. And make sure to have comfortable angle. I see many people painting from this side, from this one. Like, you can even zoom closely if it's comfortable for you. Yep. And try to make as many moves as possible, so as many brush strokes. First of all, we'll add highlight here in the corners. We need to analyze every corner, then we need to analyze connection between different parts of the object. For example, this and this, also wood and metal, and then we need to analyze edges. For example, here we have this detail from the sculpt, and we can pick this color. We can also add highlight here. We can make it a bit bigger, place it like this, and then use neighbor color to cut it. And this is small difference, small achievement that we can add, and it will look great. Okay, let's actually add it everywhere. I think I will texture the entire thing in real time. I will also add highlight on the opposite corner here. At first, we don't rush with the contrast. I will pick literally this color from the curvature, And instead of having this straight line, I will try to make it more stylized. We have many ways how to make it. This one, for example, is another one. Always press on 4 to check if you painted on wrong surface. So in this case, I painted a bit on other face. So I can pick this color from the color base, like literally from the shadow here, and I can cut it a bit. Right away, you can see a very small difference, but it will pay off, like believe me. And this line is pretty straight as well. Let's actually break it based on the flow of the shape itself. Like we have the shape, we also have idea on the concept, we have this diagonal flow of the patterns. Here we have it as well. So I would like to have my patterns that will go kind of like this. Like we can paint highlights that will go like this. I'm just picking this color and I'm painting it along the surface. Also, I can make the same for shadows. Yep, let's detail this one a bit closely. And on this stage, guys, you need to practice a bit more in painting these patterns, even though I think if the model is pretty complex on the sculpt, it will be easier to paint. So actually for most of the games, it doesn't require much of the details, but I can play around a bit more. Maybe I will add a bit more than we have even in the concept, and it's completely fine if you're struggling with this. Just take your time, try to take it step by step. Here I want to show you one very cool trick. So we have this line and I decided to have a huge highlight or kind of stylized metal pattern from it. But you can see we have this line here as well, and it's really connected in this place. That's why I will fake the damage. I actually pick it very tiny from this side, but you can pick this color, you can make it darker, and you can outline the highlight like this. This is one cool trick that I make. You can see the difference before and after. It's very cool, especially if you want to make your highlights more volumetric. Here as well, we kind of have this connection between this and this material. Let's make it even more interesting. I will pick this darker spot, this one, and I will continue it with more brush strokes, like this. Cool thing that in modern hand paint, we have all of the guidelines in the curvature or in the shadows, like from the color base. And now we only need to improve these edges, mainly edges. I didn't paint on this. You can notice all of the brush strokes came from edges. I didn't pick this, I don't know, color or this one, added darker like shadows like this. It's completely weird. It will destroy everything. So yeah, none of this. Let's move on to more complex tricks. Here we have this connection, let's say, with this damage. Let's detail it a bit. Usually we have only one color here without any volume. But at the same time, for some reason, this color became a crack on the other side. That's why I would like to give more volume to it. I would like to split this face with more light. I will pick color of the highlights. I will continue it below like this. Pick it, increase size of the brush, and then I will create gradients along the surface. Yep, might be a bit complex at first, but that's completely fine. Yep, this way you can see how detailed it actually looks like. Completely different volume that you can't have in color base. Yep, that's why sometimes we literally need to implement these hand paint principles and add more brush strokes. And just to let you know, guys, you can make the same in Photoshop. Let's press Ctrl P, press on update. Cool. If you have experience, feel free just to add new layer here, just to be safe. And the same way, you can even detail highlights from the top. Actually, I love Photoshop a lot. It's so comfortable. It's so great to blend colors between each other in Photoshop. You can have your soft brush, pick this color and just press it. Soft brush in Photoshop for some reason is way softer than in 3D code. Yes, let's have it like this. This type of model, instead of rotating it, I would like to just paint a bit more in Photoshop. It's pretty easy. Here is the same way. Like you can think, where do I need to place my highlights? We have all the guidelines. We have light sides and line from the curvature, yeah? Let's pick it. Let's actually make it a bit brighter. Let's saturate it. And here we have a corner. So it will go like this. Yep. I know might not be obvious, but this is something that you learn visually. Sometimes I literally need to paint or I need to give our paint feedback for some of my students to explain some stuff instead of yapping, Here, instead of having this boring line, I decided to have something like this. Of course, use this cutting technique. Press Ctrl S and you'll get something like this. Okay, it's a cool start, I would say. Cool thing that you can also design the shadows. For example, here we have it, We even have this tiny line of shadows, and we can design the connection between this face and this one. Let's pick this color, make it a bit darker, and let's have some interesting triangular shape. Basically the same shape that we have in the highlight, but the placement is different and it's darker. And this is actually shadow. But this is pretty advanced techniques. And if I press Ctrl S, you can see this difference here in the design itself. Remember, you can make the same in 3D code. Now it's getting even more interesting. Here we have this highlight and we have a tiny shadow. We can have a good flow between shadows and highlights. We can use the shadow to outline the highlight like this and have even more interesting flow. And this is how it works. Initially we have a crack, but this is kind of damage and it's pretty volumetric. So it makes sense to continue it on this side. So I painted this highlight first. I continued it on this side. Here I have this shadow, kind of like an old damage between wood and metal, and it will go through the bottom. And then this corner will be connected to this shadow perfectly in this stylized way. So everything here is connected with the flow, and it's pretty easy to learn. You just need to copy this stuff at first, and then you can try on your models. Or you can simply jump onto my mentorship and we'll make it pretty quick. Let's place this pattern here as well, even in the shadow, why not, to indicate the corner. Like if you want to indicate any new information, it's done only with light and shadow. And I would like to pick this color. Actually, I would like to blend it a bit, make it even softer. So simplify it a bit. Here it's important to analyze it as well. We have this corner, here we have this corner, we can place also highlights here and here. You need to see it right away. So let's make it a bit brighter and let's place it in this way. You don't need to paint much. This is a great thing. And one cool trick, when I have this long highlight, I like to outline it and break this edge. With a shadow, I will pick this color, dark one, and I will break it in order to create more interesting pattern. We are slowly getting the desired result. On this face, the difference between these two colors is huge. I will pick this bright color, increase size of the brush, and I will lit everything. If you feel that this is too soft, just make your brush smaller, pick it and detail it or cut it with a smaller size of the brush. It makes sense to blend your colors with bigger size. Obviously, it will make everything softer. And with smaller size, you can detail everything with small patterns. Here I will place this dark line. I literally pick it here. I continue it this way. And on this corner, I will place highlights with color from the curvature. Now I don't even want to detail it too much. I will have something like this. This is a very small difference, but it's worth it. If you add this everywhere, it will look very cool, like literally like in AAA game. Okay, I will merge everything just so you can see, merge down. Remember guys, you can make it in 3D code as well. Let's press Ctrl S to save everything. I have one new layer, you can name it details, and sometimes your result from Photoshop might be too soft. In some places I don't really like patterns. I think I will change the flow in 3D code to make everything even more sharper. I didn't detail this part, so let's make it. Here we have these two corners. Let's pick bright color and literally place it like this, and Another important thing is not to over detail it. That's why I usually don't paint much on the other sides. I will show you why in a second. Here I will add this shadow and I will add highlight like this. Maybe I can add a scratch like this, and that's literally it. So I think these faces aren't that important. From this angle we can't even see them, but we can definitely add some of the reflected light literally like this, with few brush strokes, just to add a bit of the paint real look. inside of it. And this is small difference, like literally these round patterns on the metals. Would work. I will even use a razor just to remove it a bit. And maybe I can place some small highlight on this corner, just to indicate it a bit more. It won't hurt at all. Here as well, I just feel that this side lack a bit of light, but I don't want to have really sharp patterns here, really detailed. I will just place some random brush strokes and blend them together. Basically, I will place this small gradient. That's it. That's completely enough for the start. And this is called the detailing stage. You can see I didn't even pick color from the color palette. I didn't add new colors. I used colors that I already have in order to detail it. This way it will be easier to add new stuff later and take it step by step, especially if you're a beginner. Let's make this part more logic. I don't like that I have this curvy line. I would like to make it straight, like in the metal. It will give completely different feel. Yep, this way it's way better. Like it's not a lava, it's not a water. It shouldn't be that curvy. Yeah, I decided to add some interesting pattern like this. This is another example of stylized highlights, and this is a bigger shape and this one is a bit smaller. And actually it's not that hard to add. I'm picking this bright color, placing mask like this, picking neighbor color and cut it. That's it. Okay guys, let me know what do you think about this. The same way we need to paint something like this. Here we have this corner, but curvature is barely visible. That's actually good. Let's pick this color. Yep, we already have it on other side. And here we have symmetry. I really suggest to have more symmetry on your models if you're beginners. Here I will fill the side a bit more. This is small difference before and after. And I will have the same color. I will pick color for the shadow and I will outline this highlight like this. Actually, this is a simple crack that we can paint. Yep. From the distance looks pretty cool. You don't need to detail it too much. It's barely visible. You can detail this connection, let's say, and you need to add highlight on this corner. Don't need to overthink. Just add it based on the symmetry. You need to try to hide symmetry as much as you can. Here we also have corner, if you notice. Yep, let's have it like this. And that's literally it. You can see the difference before and after. I don't need to paint much here. Yep, I will name this layer details. Don't forget to save your file. Press on Ctrl P to move to Photoshop. Nice. Here you need to click on wireframe and let's hold Alt to copy the layer on top. This way it's a bit easier to paint. At least you can understand what part is it. Let's detail this a bit. I'm not sure if I will paint it in Photoshop. Then, yeah, this one is not comfortable because I need to place my hand, you know. I need to rotate model this way. Yep. I will pick color from the curvature. For some reason, this color is literally cold. So once again, let's pick it. Let's make it brighter. Let's saturate it. First of all, don't rush. Try to blend this color as much as possible. I think this one is something ideal. Maybe a bit brighter, yeah. And if you have these subtle highlights, you can even paint a bit harder. And that's completely fine. You can get something like this. Looks pretty weird. Yep, I get it. Let's clean it up by increasing size of the brush and literally pressing harder on it. Yep. On this tab, we just need to zoom a bit closer. We need to figure out what's happening here. Like here we have all of these tiny lines. I would like to make it as accurate as possible. Like I have this one highlight, which is a bit sharper. And then I have a gradient that comes through these highlights. Even this gradient could be in some interesting shape. Like it could go along the whole surface. It can look like this. You can definitely see the difference here before and after. Let's start from the opposite side. I will place highlights literally on these corners like this. I don't suggest to add patterns like this. If you want to add some highlights, try to have them look at least like this, yep. But it does not make sense to add this highlight below. I will blend one side of these highlights. Yep, this is very complex stuff right now. In my opinion, painting something like this is way more complex than this one. Because this shape is pretty simple and you need to hide the symmetry somehow. Okay, let's at least compare the difference before and after. Yep. once again, without any details and with details. Here I would like to have the same highlights, mark it pretty roughly, then pick neighbor color and cut it. Hit press few times harder and you'll get something like this. Okay, actually looks pretty cool. I'm not sure why I haven't discovered it yet. Of course, in the concept we can't even see these details, and same for this one. Here we obviously have this crack. We can detail it even more, we can continue it even more, we can make it longer based on the normals, and that's completely fine. You can see this small difference before and after. Don't worry, we make the same for our RPG game. Let's make this line even chunkier, like this. And of course I will provide this 3D code file, so we can check everything layer by layer. Here, instead of having this straight line, I will have something more interesting. Yep. If you watch more of this process, you will notice that principles are the same, even are the same. It only depends on the flow of the object. Here as well, you have this tiny straight line and this corner, and we know what to do with it. We'll just continue it like this. Now we need to make these patterns more organic somehow, and one thing to make it is to literally pick this color, increase size of the brush, and blend them together. Like this is still accumulation of light and it collects energy. We need to have some soft light from these bright patterns. I decided to add it here. And you can see this one is pretty tough for me, I'm not gonna lie. Also pretty interesting. I will add some small stylized detail here. I will even pick shadow and I will make it more volumetric like this. I will put shadow below these highlights. This is a difference, and in my opinion, we don't need to detail much here. If you don't know where to paint, what else do I need to make? Think about the connection between different objects. Here, obviously, the connection is kind of weird between wood and metal. Let's add slight bevel here, like this one. And now we have new corners, so let's add highlights. And we need to add highlights on the new corners that we got. And this is the difference that we have here. Here as well, we have this main highlight along this surface. And on this part, I think we can even detail it a bit more. Let's zoom closely. Let's pick smaller size of the brush. Yep, and have something like this. And this is the difference. Now guys, let's finally continue on the top side. I think it will be a bit easier. Let's pick this curvature color, make it even brighter, and paint right away on it. Yep, just like this. Same way as we did before. Paint roughly at first, then pick per color and cut it this way. If you want, you can always have Photoshop as an alternative to paint stuff like this. Here we have it as well, but this corner is a bit different. It looks like this. I will detail every part where we have crack. So here as well, and this is small dip. So let's pick the same color and paint it with these directional moves. You need to locate your hand comfortably and paint from the top to the bottom. Literally like this. We are slowly getting our final results step by step. Even though it's not that visible, but the detail base will be very important later, because on top we will add additional gradients, highlights, something like overlay layer and others. I want to make a very subtle highlight like this, so it will have this direction. We can usually see something like this on the metal, actually same way as this one. Yep, let's pick it and let's make it a bit straighter. Nice. Maybe we can have something like this here as well. Like so far I like it. Maybe I will simplify it. Right now it might look too procedural, but I can always simplify it later. My goal is to show you all the principles and the approach. So you might make some of the mistakes at first, but principles are the same. Some tiny painting here as well. This is a difference. Here we can add big highlight along the surface, but it shouldn't be too bright. Try to fill the side with at least something. It could look like this. And same for this corner, like literally the same as we did before. And on the other side, maybe less brighter to have a bit of the difference. So if you notice, I mainly placed highlights, and this is the improvement. Because we have a nice color base, we have nice light and shadows, but we don't have nice patterns. We only have curvature from substance. I hope you will get this principle after this video. Yep, let's place some of the light here on this edge. And I think we're literally done with this detailing stage. Later, I might add very cool small details. Actually, let's try adding them right now. So you have some carvings here, and we can simply make it with shadows. Obviously, we need to make this part pop even more a bit, so let's pick out for the shadow. Let's paint it below this highlight. Yep, let's pop it a bit more. Let's place it here as well on this side. Now with this simple trick, it feels like this is a bit above. But all we need is to add shadow, and let's add more visible highlights. You can see these carvings look kind of cool, and this is next detailing step. You just need to zoom closely, and you need to introduce shadows below these highlights. We can also add it on the other side a bit, but a bit softer and a bit smaller. And right now, maybe I can place some of the brighter highlights, but they will be very small and they will be on the most visible parts to indicate these corners a bit more. Just like this. I mean, it's almost a white color. I can add it a bit, but very carefully. Don't need to rush. Okay, and this is what we want on this stage. And then we forgot other surfaces, like this one. Looks a bit lame as well. So we can detail it a bit. I don't suggest to overthink or add too much of the patterns here. You can continue highlight like this. Let's see the difference. And we can continue highlight here as well. And definitely here on this damage. We will make the same here, but it's not very visible for me. I want to add some of the soft reflected light here. It feels like one boring color. Literally pick this color, increase size of the brush, and add something like this. Then blend it together. This is small difference before and after. Looks a bit funnier, and that's literally what we need. To fill this surface with a bit of light here as well. Let's add it here. Yep, and let's add it just a bit here as well. Remember guys, this is all in real time. So I'm trying to think, explain in English and also paint at the same time. And here guys, we're finally done with the detailing on the metal. Now of course we need to move on to the wood. Principles here will be kind of similar. Yep, nothing hard here to be honest, but it will be more interesting. As I mentioned on my first video, if you think about wood, you probably imagine pattern like this, but you need to get this stuff out of your head. Wood is actually cracked material. It could consist of different light planes, and patterns could be way more interesting. In this case, we don't even have this flat lines that some people like to paint. We already have all the guidelines in this sculpt. We just need to improve it a bit more. First of all, let's continue this crack and any other crack. Here we can see the difference. Then we need to pick this color. We need to pick very warm color and of course brighter. We literally need to paint with this type of yellow. And let's paint in the corners the same way. After a few brush strokes, I got the result like this one. It's pretty interesting to have bigger shape and smaller one. And it will go along this surface. It will connect, I think, to the shadow. So here I would like to make more interesting connection between metal and wood, and this is actually the difference. Yep, I painted a bit on top of the normals, doesn't really matter. I think it won't ruin it, but I will make this part pop more a bit like this. You can see right away it looks way more stylized, chunky, bulky. Yep, let's put this highlight on this corner as well. And now we have a problem. I painted with the same color and I don't see difference between this highlight and this one. But this is a big mistake where you have bright highlights everywhere. So we just need to blend it a bit, make it just a bit darker. And I would like to add some small hand-painted damage like this. And the reason why it looks cool, because it will continue the shape of this angle from the metal. We have it like this, and it's kind of connected on the wood surface. I decided to add some of the darker colors below, and damn, I like this specific part. We just need to add the same details everywhere. It will be 90% of a good result. By the way, what the hell is this? Let's use a razor to remove it. Let's add highlight here as well. Notice, here we have this interesting corner, this one, yep. And I prefer to pick this shadow and continue this corner a bit in order to create smaller detail. And then I add highlight on this corner. Let's also add it here on top, just make it a bit bigger. So far, this is our difference. Yep, looks pretty cool. I will put a small shadow here and highlight on the other side. I will make small imperfections. And here as well. At this stage, I'm just showing you all the places where you can add highlights. Yep, let's add it here as well to make this part pop a bit more. And you can form any kind of surface simply with shadow and with light. The light will come from above, it will look like this. You can pick darker line to make it even more volumetric. And this is how it will look like. Or we can even have it the opposite way. First we can block shadow and then pick brighter one, and we can paint some part like this. But we don't need to paint some small details like this right now. Let's focus on the curvature. I think it will be pretty straightforward later on, so we will move on to time-lapse. But very important not to paint any additional details, like crack here, crack like this one. Like you don't have these details in the color base, so don't paint them at all. Try to focus more on the corners, on curvature, like I said many times, and try to focus on the connection between different materials. What can be painted here, for example, based on the symmetry, you don't need to paint something like this. Yep, look pretty weird. Instead, we need to paint this stuff. This way, the symmetry will look a bit better. And on top, for example, we can add highlights. And here, guys, it will be the hardest part. Sometimes you can spend days on doing this, especially if you have other activities, but it's totally worth it and it's totally worth learning. By the way, here I detailed this entire shape with a bit darker lines. I just continue them, and I don't even need references for this. You don't need specific references for what that you already have, like these lines or stuff like this. Yep, I can continue the shadow, and now we can pick this color, make it brighter, and put highlight on top to make it pop even more. Now I want to talk a bit over this time-lapse process of detailing wood. I started with corners. I picked this yellow, kind of yellow color, so color which is way warmer than initial color. And first I started with corners. I decided to speed this process up. In my opinion, it's not that interesting, but you can see how I formed the volume actually. Like, I used my imagination in this case and all of the design principles of light theory to form additional details, literally with light and shadow. I kind of sculpt additional details that we don't have from ZBrush. Here I decided to paint this highlight based on the symmetry, so it's not that visible. And here as well, I detailed few of these corners where we don't have any highlights, we only have tiny lines from curvature. This detailing stage is the hardest only because you need to spend much of your time without seeing any of the results. But only then we will jump to gradients and it will be funnier. By the way, many of my students who learn this detailing process, they somehow enjoy it way more than sculpting. So many people told me that they want to do only texturing for their work. But to do only texturing, you just need to be very qualified in this, and it's possible as well. For example, I got my offers only for texturing for the last couple of years. And this is the hardest part for people who don't know how to paint, and that's obvious because you just need to learn and practice more of moving your hand correctly and painting with short directional moves, not with one constant line like this. And then I decided to paint inside of the pipe a bit, create some patterns for the shadows, then make these patterns pop more with highlights, and then I suppose I will paint a bit more with shadows, for example here on top. I placed all of these hand paint details based on the color base from the sculpting, basically. Now we need to finalize this texture with additional gradients. Let's press Ctrl P right away, and from the reference you can see that here we have this glossiness. We even have additional colors, we'll add them in the end. And yep, we need to make this metal glossier, and that's it. We can easily make it with polygonal lasso in Photoshop. Let's press on L and select this one. Then let's start with this small part. Add new layer, all gradients. And we need to make a selection based on the edge and all of the corners. Just like this. Nice. Press on Enter. On this specific metal part, in this corner we painted a brighter highlight. And from this highlight we need to kind of have this glossiness that will make it even shinier. So we have an easy way to make it. We can change this layer to overlay. Let's try this at first. Pick this color. So overlay works in a bit different way. You can play around. Overlay can change the color itself. It can make everything brighter, just like this, without any difference in color. It can make everything darker. So for overlay, I will pick this warm color. Yep. Let's make it brighter and in this range, so not very saturated. Just reduce it and you will see small difference. And let's press few times, literally on this corner with bigger size of the soft brush. That's very important. And if I press on Ctrl S, you will see this difference right away. Looks pretty cool, by the way. What the hell happened here? Let me check. Okay, I have Russian language here. I need to change it to English, definitely. So right away we can get cool result like this. Overlay is very useful for brightening everything up. Let's make this specific part even brighter. And cool thing with overlay, we will save the initial details below. I just love it, even though I think might be a bit too bright. So let's make the same for these surfaces. Just select it like this. And this one. You can see here we have light and here we painted these highlights. Okay, let's press once or twice here. And in this case, I will literally press on the middle. If I press Ctrl S, you will see that it will be way sharper and nicer. This is the difference. It kind of looks finished already. Now I want to show you other trick. Instead of having overlay, we can also have normal layer. Normal is a bit better if you want to hide some of the details or if you want to create ambient occlusion. Based on my experience, I can tell you right away, just use normal for ambient occlusion or some darker gradients. What do I mean by that? Here we have the connection between different parts of the metal. Let's pick this color, let's make it a bit more saturated and a bit darker, and let's paint ambient occlusion slightly. I'm not painting it very hard like this, just slightly. I'm not even painting inside of the selection, as you can see. If I press Ctrl S, you will see this cool difference. Without ambient occlusion and with, it will create more volume. Also, sometimes I don't even use overlay at all. Normal or standard layer works very nice with these bright gradients as well. Like we can have something like this. It will look very cool. Notice here we have this kind of crack, and it will be very cool to add very small ambient occlusion touch inside of it, just like this. Yeah, this is how it looks like. Keep in mind that you're using soft brush, that's why sometimes you need to go over with a smaller brush to detail it a bit more. You might lose some of the details. Now guys, it's very important not to merge these two layers, because you will get weird result like this one. Yep, overlay and normal are different. Let's press Shift Ctrl Alt E to have new layer based on the all layers below, and you can simply remove these two others. Or you can leave them, doesn't really matter. So this is my new gradient layer once everything is good, and I can keep working on it. Here I have this very bright gradient, and I really want to add it on other corners as well. We just need to have more accents at this point. Before I didn't want to rush. Now I can clearly see that I can add more interesting patterns here and on this corner. But these new highlights, they're just a bit brighter and a bit smaller. So at the moment, I'm adding only new additional details. Yep, this is the difference if we compare before and after gradient stage. I will blend these two together a bit. I think they're too shiny. Maybe I will continue this grade like this. Make it a bit more interesting, a bit more volumetric. And if you really want, you can make it even sharper in 3D code. Like if you want to achieve the best quality. So this highlight is in the bottom, and obviously it will have less light than this one. So I will blend it a bit more with the initial surface. Yep, I still don't like that these two are too bright. Sometimes you need to remove it. Guys, the thing that you saw right now was just analyzing based on my experience, and it's pretty hard to notice on your own. That's why we have a full-age training with more than 80 lessons with our paint feedbacks and my mentorship, where we texture, present and post at least 5 models. We had complete beginners with no experience in painting, and they managed to get really nice results. Some of their works blew up on our station, and some of them managed to find job in Gamedev and freelance opportunities. So if you want to master this full profession from scratch, you can enroll from my free webinar. The link will be in the description. It's very cool not to have bright highlights everywhere, because these are important small accents that you need to add only in the sharpest places. Like here, it's totally fine to edit. First it will look a bit dirty, but then you need to blend it together. Yep. Now I really like how it looks, and this is kind of stylized way that we need. And then I noticed that this part is too soft, so I can add probably some additional very barely visible details or even brighter highlight on the corner here. I don't like that this part is too glossy, Maybe it's overkill a bit, so I will use a razor just a bit. Finally, it looks something that we need, and now we can add additional colors. If you notice here, we have these green touches, we have some of the purple, which is actually random. We have blue reflection from the sky, even though here we have wood, so the reflection should be kind of red or orange. Here we have rim light, so it's completely different from the game ready asset. And also very important, guys, if you're creating textures for PBR game, you don't need to paint any reflections from other objects at all, because in game engine it will look kind of weird. Also, I don't suggest to paint really bright white highlights like this. People make this mistake every time by adding this highlight in some PBR game. I mean, this is PBR plus Handpaint. Handpaint need to add additional details. Basically, game engine will replicate the entire light, so you don't need to add such bright white highlights or reflections of light. But we can definitely add some additional artistic touches. So I was inspired by this blue, and of course we can add it. Okay, let's hide the reference. Let's pick this color, shift it to this sky blue, make it way brighter and more saturated. You need to create a new layer, 100% for this. And let's add few of these brush strokes, some of them bigger, some of them smaller, and let's just blend them together. You can also use a razor to blend it even more smoothly. Yep, it will look pretty cool, I can just say it. Also, we really like to add some purple, bright purple on the shadows. Like this spot is pretty empty, so let's add some purple here. Let's take a look. We have some purple on the surface as well. Let's pick it, it should be way brighter. That's important thing. Guys, because you're blending these colors a lot, initial color should be very bright and saturated. Otherwise, you won't get this result. Yep. Let's add it like this and remove it a bit with a razor. This is just small artistic touch. That's it. Sometimes you can even turn these touches to some interesting stylized shapes. Also, it's very cool to blend some red in darker parts where you have ambient occlusion. For example, here in the crack. Just pick this bright red or orange color and paint it inside. Yep, blend it together. Make sure it works with the surface as well. You can add some additional dots like this. Yep, you can see we got this nice artistic touch. Maybe a bit random. I suppose this one could be even more saturated and reddish, because right now it looks like a reflection from wood, but it should be a rust. Okay, this one is a bit cooler. Let's see what we can add. I will definitely add some of the darker red here. I want to add a bit hard purple here, literally pressing like this with a soft brush on the shadow to have very nice soft feel. Yep, and I think that's it. I won't add green here, maybe only on this surface. No, actually I think this is already too much. The only thing I want to make this part a bit more shinier, a bit warmer. Let's have selection like this based on the patterns that we already painted. Let's pick this warm yellow color, and I will reduce size of the brush and press right in the front here. Yeah, boom, we have something like this. It's too glossy, I think. I reduce opacity to 40, and I think it looks finished. And this is exactly what we need. When you have something like this, later on you can detail it even more, define all of these patterns more. Yep. Feel free to play around, but for this tutorial I will stop. I decided to add one last highlight like this one. I think we need only one spot that should be the brightest, and you can see the difference between these gradients and final touches with color. Also, you can define this pattern even more by giving it a bit of ambient occlusion from the wood. Let's pick this color, make it a bit more saturated and darker, and paint slightly on it, even more saturated. Yep, and a bit from the bottom here. Let's see the difference here. Yep, and this is what can we get. I'm not sure if it's very important or not. We need to eyeball this a bit. I will use a razor for this middle part. I like how it looks here in these places. I think I'm going a bit too much, but that's completely fine. Okay, let's merge all of these layers. Let's press Shift-Ctrl-O-T to create a new layer, and we can do it to final touches. One problem that I went a bit too far with this specific part, but we haven't put any gradients on the wood and on the metal. It was more for the demonstration. So let's start actually with gradients on the metal. At first you just need to take it step by step. Make a selection like this for this entire part. I forgot that I have this layer on top. Never mind, I will add just another one. And you need to create at least this big dark gradient and then smaller ambient occlusion here. What I mean by that, you just pick this color, make it a bit more saturated, increase size of the brush and tap once or twice. Then right click and try to press with this pen, not with mouse. So right click, basically click on the button, select inverse and place ambient occlusion on the other side, on this part. Let's check the results. Yeah, we'll get tiny results like this, but it's worth it. Here in the bottom I will add some color touches right away. I don't need to overcomplicate it. I will add a bit darker ambient occlusion below. You can see I pick literally dark color, and I'm not painting on this selection. I'm painting a bit outside of it. Yep, I'll get the result like this. Might look weird a bit from the beginning. Let's remove this selection and add final one for the light gradients for the top, basically for this edge. Pick it, make it brighter, a bit warmer, and press literally once, pretty slightly, and let's see this result. Yep, looks cool, and this is difference that we have. We made it a bit more readable. Decided to detail it a bit. I'm not sure if it's worth it or not. On this stage you basically saw most of my instruments. You can play around, and now it's a matter of design knowledge, art fundamentals, and more practice, and receiving feedbacks of course. Let's have the same here. I won't even add any selections because this part is so simple. I will literally remove some of these details and simplify it a bit. Sometimes it's better not to have these details in unnecessary places. This one could be even darker. I'm using razor right now. Yep, I think that's enough for the metal. Just in case, press Ctrl S to save everything, then Ctrl P, just in case as well, update. And now you don't need to use wireframe in Photoshop. You need to orientate based on these highlights. Yep, so this selection has nothing to do with your wireframe because it could be different. Let's have a selection like this. You can see I'm deselecting all of the imperfections, all of the scratches. Yep, of course I can have my wireframe on top just to check if I don't paint on other object. Yep, it's completely fine. And now we have few easy options. Basically we need to add a light gradient and that's it. But we need to make it very carefully. Let's pick this color first, make it brighter, warmer, less saturated, increase size, press once and a bit more, press just a bit here, be careful. In the middle we need to have most of the light and a bit in the back. I think that will be it. Yep, you can see it looks pretty nice. I'm not sure why, but I haven't painted on this part. It looks weird as hell. Maybe I need to detail it a bit. You can see we can connect this highlight. Actually, let's make it right now. I will continue this highlight and I will have a gradient from it. I will make it a bit more volumetric. Maybe I will start a bit of the detailing stage. Usually it takes plenty of time. Depends on the object, of course. At least something like this is way better. Press Ctrl P, of course. And then just pick this dark color, make it a bit more saturated. Every shadow is more saturated and a bit darker. And paint here. That's it. Boom. We have this ambient occlusion, even though we need to paint on top a bit more here, but looks cooler, yeah. If you're satisfied with this result, just pick this color and fix this seam in 3D code. Just paint on top and then detail this part a bit more. Okay, I suppose that this is exactly what we want. And we can add additional colors right in the 3D code. You need to get used to these sliders. Pick this color, shift the hue, make it more saturated, and this way, I think even more saturated, I will blend some red here. It will look like an interesting artistic touch. Here as well. In this case, it's literally purple. And we are finally getting closer to final result. After the detailing stage, this one feels pretty easy. I like it, let's save it, press Ctrl P once again, don't forget to make it, and you need to have same gradients for this top part. Now guys, we need to create gradients for the wood. By the way, this is different day for me. So let's press Ctrl P and move on to Photoshop. And then we have a very cool trick. We need to drop our ID map right here in Photoshop. Make sure it's perfectly placed on top, and then you can use Magic Wand tool to select only wood. You can hide this layer, and literally by clicking on this, holding Shift, you can add to this selection. And by holding Alt, you can remove the selection. Yep, just like this. And I think we need to create completely new layer. Press Shift Ctrl Alt E, new layer based on other layers, and let's press Ctrl L. This way, I want to increase the brightness of these values. I think, like by default, it should be a bit brighter in general. Here we can control these values, and we can control the contrast, by the way. So you can see our values in this dark range. This one is in the middle, it's kind of gray. So most of them are on the left side, closer to this dark slider. So let's make it actually a bit brighter and maybe increase the contrast this way. We also have output levels. This is great if we want to remove the contrast, just like this, but we don't need it for now. Okay, this is small difference. Yep, I think these values are fine. Press on OK. Let's see the difference. Yep, we could make it on color base, but it's completely fine. Once you have your details correct, it doesn't matter how you will change the entire texture. Let's start with ambient occlusion on the wood. First of all, pick this general color, and then ambient occlusion should be darker and more saturated. It should be more colorful. And let's change the hue closer to cold color. So closer to this one. And I think we can try this out. Let's literally paint it like this a few times, from this. And yeah, we'll get something like this. Of course, I destroyed some of these details here, but you can see we got this nice soft gradient. And it should be colorful, that's very important. Okay, let's have it like this. And actually, I like these details. I don't want to kind of hide them much. I will decrease size of the brush. I will make it smaller. And in this case, we still need to place ambient occlusion, but it will be a bit smaller. Let's try. You can definitely see this difference. And this soft dark gradient makes everything more volumetric. Let's create new layer so we can see ambient occlusion. Yep. So we literally need to add it below these metal parts. Let's add it here as well, and on this one. You can literally copy my moves, and here, this is the difference, makes everything way more interesting, just like this. This is why I love Photoshop, and this is something that will probably take you lots of time to make in Substance Painter, like if you don't merge it with Photoshop somehow. Okay, let's also add ambient occlusion on this part. Yep, great. And of course, under this one, I almost forgot. Let's have it a bit here as well. Nice. Then guys, I want to push big chunks of the wood. For example, this one. Let's select it. You can see it's way more volumetric on the sculpt compared to others. First of all, I will go to layer below and I will increase the entire brightness. Press on Ctrl L and increase it like this. And then of course, if it's brighter, it should be warmer. So press Ctrl B and to make it just a bit warmer, if you press Ctrl S. Okay, it's a bit too much, yeah. It's a bit extreme, but looks kind of promising. It's pretty cool. Let's reduce these values a bit back. Just a bit. I think it's fine because later we will add darker gradient from the bottom, and then you need to right click, select inverse and add ambient occlusion from this part. In this case, ambient occlusion should be smaller and more visible. Make sure you have this size of the brush, and I'm literally painting outside of the selection. Yep, you can see how nice it actually looks. Now it looks pretty volumetric, and I like it. Maybe ambient occlusion will be a bit softer. Yeah, it's fine. Also, I realized that I forgot to add ambient occlusion here. For me, this part should be a bit darker. So let's add it this way. Yep. And then let's select another piece of wood, which is very volumetric, like literally this entire part. Make sure you don't select this one. Make sure you selected everything inside of this specific UV. Otherwise, you might have problems because this is symmetrical part. Yep, nice. Selection is clean. Go to this initial layer, press Ctrl L and increase the brightness. Just a bit. Ctrl B, make it a bit warmer. Let's see. Yep, looks pretty cool. And now, of course, save this selection. Don't waste your time. Just select inverse and add ambient occlusion right away. More saturated. And let's paint it just like this. Yep, exactly what we need. Now, guys, we need to create light gradients on the wood the same way as we did on the metal. We need to select all of these inflated images, of course, based on our hand paint, not based on the color map here as well. Actually, it would look like this. Make sure you count all of the cracks in the selection. I only need to put gradient on the top. Definitely select this part based on this crack. And of course, this part where we have our highlights on edges. Okay, let's actually add new layer because it's completely different. Let's pick this color, make it way warmer and way brighter. And we don't need to press hard like this. We need to press very slightly with big, actually huge size of the brush. Just slightly like this. I've already added like very slightly and added only on the top. And here where we have our highlights. Let's check it out. Yep, it's added a bit. This part is definitely more volumetric and we definitely need to add few light gradients on this part. My selection at this point is pretty dirty. Never mind, just like this. And yep, we're kind of done. Now let's create a new layer once again, Shift Ctrl Alt E, and let's remove all the other layers. Even this one, you can see this is actually a huge difference between the detailing stage and pushing it with gradients, and it's pretty easy to make once you have all of the details correct in check, and you can see it's way easier to brighten everything up. Now let's make wood even more interesting with additional colors like green. It will look pretty nice, and we need to have the logic when we add these colors. It should be in darker spots where we have our ambient occlusion. Kind of makes sense. And actually these additional colors could have the volume inside of them. So you can pick a bit warmer color like yellow, and you can add additional particles to fake this mouse. Let's have something like this. I will still keep the volume. Okay, this is how it looks like. Pretty weird. I hate this result. No way I will leave it as it is. I will just blend it together because it shouldn't take too much of the attention. Yeah, actually it's way better to make these colors a bit softer. Maybe I can add a bit brighter accents on the corners. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Like to add these highlights, but not too bright, just a bit in the corners, like this. Pick a very warm color. Let's add it here. Well, especially on this one, let's leave pretty interesting accent here. And here as well. Yep, I like it way more, even though now the wood looks like a shiny metal, which is weird of course. And if you have something like this, these tiny small highlights, make sure to just blend them a bit more. This way it looks way more organic once I blend them. And once I paint it with these very soft details, I want to detail it actually a bit. Yep, I can add even minor details like this. And now combination of this soft green color and some harder details next to it, it looks pretty nice for me. Notice I'm not placing it randomly on the surface. It has some logic. It looks like it's a mouse. Also, I like this green color, which is closer to blue. Okay, let's add it here. So it's barely visible, still visible, and still very nice touch. Also, it could be pretty unusual, but we can literally blend gray on the wood, pick this color, reduce the saturation, and to make it a bit brighter. Yep, and we can leave all of these colors on the surface itself here. And this is just nice, interesting artistic touch. and then I made this green pattern even bigger. Actually, I filled this entire side with green, and I think we need to fill this part as well, at least half of it, like this. And of course it has some logic, because once you add small brush strokes everywhere and their sizes are equal, same brightness, at some point they will look like a noise. Also, it's repetitive elements that will kill your design. Let's remove them. And I want to select this specific wood plant which is on top. Yep, only this one. Let's copy the entire layer, press Ctrl L and increase the brightness, then make it even warmer. It will be cool to make this pop a bit. Yep, I want to add ambient occlusion from this specific kind of crack or whatever it is, just like this. So I think this result so far is really good, but not this one. It became too soft, so let's pick some of the colors of the highlights, maybe darker colors, and let's just detail it a bit. You need to put few of the patterns, define the corners that we had. Right now they are barely visible because of the soft brush. Then of course update layers in Photoshop once you paint anything. Also I will remove all of the layers that I have below, and we can start making this entire texture even more readable with normal layer and additional big gradients. So if you think about this, this is literally a round object, but for some reason all of the values are the same. Like in the bottom we have the same values as on top, we have the same values on the metal here and there, and it doesn't look too realistic. That's why we need to add bigger gradients. On the normal layer, let's literally pick this color of the wood, make it a bit more saturated, a bit colder, increase size of the brush, then select this bottom part of the wood. Then I need to uncheck this one, inner part. Yep, and I need to have huge size of the brush and press once. Let's make it a bit darker. This way we will indicate the roundness of the object. Press Ctrl S. Yep, great. This is exactly what we want. And let's make same but with white. So I will select wood here like this, and just in case I will deselect this inner part of the pipe. In this case you need to create new layer. For every new gradient, pick very warm color like this one and press once slightly right in the front. Okay, nice. I didn't kill it because it's pretty easy to kill it like this. Let's press once here as well and a bit here. What we will get? Yep, we push it a bit. I like it. Maybe it killed a bit of ambient occlusion. So I like how bright it actually looks. We can add same bright gradients on this one. Increase size and press once carefully. And then you can use a razor to remove it from the bottom. Yeah, pretty cool. Notice that I'm using actually standard layer or normal, because it will reduce the contrast a bit and hide unnecessary details. Then I want to have another layer, but this one will be more colorful and it will be for big darker gradient on this top part of the wood. I'll pick this color, make it more saturated, closer to purple, and I will just have something like this. Yep, now it looks pretty weird and it looks too bright. Let's decrease the brightness and of course change opacity to something like 30. I'm not sure if I need to leave it or not. What do you think? I think I will remove it from this part. It doesn't make much difference, never mind. Let's blend it. Then I want to add bigger gradient on this metal. Literally pick it, make it warmer, press once. By the way, notice it's not warm like this. On the metal we don't need to change color a lot. Let's just press once. Okay, something like this is more readable and cooler. We can also add it without any selection, just like this. I want to make this part a bit brighter. Same for this one, without any selection. Let's make it brighter. And of course for the top part as well. Let's massively increase size of the brush and press few times. Yep. So guys, you can see there are lots of steps to make this texture pop more a bit. If I merge all of these layers, this will be the difference before and after. We made it just a bit more readable. And finally, I can fix some of the additional elements. Maybe I can push the details on my texture even more. In this case, I think it's fine. Maybe some brighter highlights here, maybe some green here. But one thing, if you're texturing this for the game, Make sure that you have all colors here. I haven't painted here too much, but something like this looks a bit weird, but it's pretty easy to fix. Based on the patterns, you need to pick this highlight, you need to continue this, and you can create volume on the shadow side. You can make it in 3D code, you can make it in Photoshop. For example, you can sketch it in 3D code and then move on to Photoshop and maybe blend it even more, make it a bit faster. I think here we need to add lots of reflection light and a bit more damage. But for presentation, it doesn't really matter because I will present from this side. First, you need to have very sharp highlight here, and then increase size of the brush, blend it a bit, make sure here you have interesting patterns in the connection between different metal parts. At this stage, I'm painting pretty fast, I'm not even thinking much about light area. Like, once you have some practice, this is kind of automatic process for you. You can see here I have this big rack, and let's continue it on this face. First we continue the highlight, it looks like a straight line, then we have a gradient from this highlight. And even this gradient will have some interesting shape, this one. Here it could be more interesting as well, we could have damage which looks more stylized. We can make it pop with this highlight. Let's continue highlight here as well, like this. Put some time in fixing all of the seams. Sometimes you can literally paint on top of them. Yeah, you can see how easy it is in 3D code to fix them like this. By the way, it will look like a small bubble. It's very important before uploading this task to your client, especially if this is a good client. Finally, I think I will make this highlight bright one. Actually, it's the brightest highlight on the entire model, a bit more readable. I will also make this part a bit brighter for the accents, and maybe let's make this one a bit more readable and brighter. Feel free to check some of the details here and there. I mean, easier said than done. You need to have very precise view. You don't need to analyze any reference, because on this stage you need to take a look at your texture and maybe ask some people for an honest feedback. From this moment, it's all regarding art area. You need to remove unnecessary patterns, make sure the flow of the highlights is correct, and that's it. And maybe I can push this texture even more. Let's add additional layer, overlay, but in 3D code. Pick very warm overlay and a very bright one, increase size of the brush, and let's press once on top. Yep, I think it looks even cooler. This is a small difference, we need to be very careful with this. And overlay can make some parts darker, for example this one. And guys, I finally made this texture. All we need is to export it, go to texture, export and color. It was pretty hard to record most of the process in real time and explain it step by step, simply because I wasn't ready. Last time I did this for my full course that I was developing for half a year. So if you like this process or you were struggling a bit, if you want to study it deeply, just click the link in the description and sign up for free webinar. There I will open access for my course. Before rendering this model, I decided to make one final touch on the texture. Let's create new layer. This is very important. First, you need to pick pure black color. Then press on X and pick very bright yellow color. Then you need to click on this gradient tool in 3D code, and here you have two spheres. To invert colors, press on X. Make sure you have this yellow color on the top. You can click on these spheres. Sometimes it's very hard to click on them. You need to rotate around a bit, maybe zoom closer. Actually, it's not necessary, it's just a small touch. So if you don't like them, you don't even need to add them. Let's put them just a bit on top. Okay, like this. Press on layer and then press yes to fill the entire layer with this gradient. Then press on B. You can see we have these weird issues. We can fix some of this weird stuff by filling the gradient once again, but it might be even worse. This is so damn weird. Okay, I want to have this gradient on the top. Also, you can use Photoshop and levels to control this gradient. We can play around with these spheres even more. Okay, let's press on layer and yes, we have something like this. And now we need to change this blending mode from standard to color dodge. This way we can only see bright values and we can't see black ones. And of course we need to change opacity to something like 10 or 15, and this way you make this top part a bit brighter. But you can see, because of these artifacts, we can see stuff like this. So sometimes it's not worth it in my opinion. And also sometimes you can make it manually with this layer and huge size of the brush. Then of course export your texture once again. For rendering I use Marmoset Toolbox and it's the easiest software to render unlit, and you can make it in any other software, but this one is the easiest. Let's just drop our model here. Then for example you can apply default material, but make sure you disabled all of the lights that you have in your scene, just to let you know. If you have any lights, it will look weird like this. So to render only color, just remove all of the lights. Then make sure you have diffusion type on unlit, and we need to import the color here like this. Make sure you don't have any glossiness or roughness on the model. You don't need to have any metalness, just remove it. And here in Marmoset I will rotate this model just a bit. I will pick the best angle. I have a bit of post-process in my camera. I made it a bit brighter with exposure. I added a bit of the contrast and a bit of sharpen, even though the difference is pretty small. And then of course we go to render. If you want to render it with transparent background, you need to enable transparency, PNG, pick your resolution. I use this one, and then I just press F10 to render it. And that's it. In my opinion, knowledge about rendering, presentation and posting on ArtStation is very underrated, and sometimes it's a big part of your success in the industry. Okay guys, that will be it for this free course. I hope this was helpful. I watched it a few times during the editing and it could be pretty tough for the beginners, but at least you'll get the entire image of the pipeline. And if you want to learn this entire profession or this specific skill from scratch, from introduction to every software, complex design, presentation and finding a job, you can jump into my full training, and I will open access only on my free webinar. And on the webinar I will also give away prizes that will help your career. So far results from our students were amazing. And that will be it. Please let me know in the comments what model should I texture next, or maybe what style do I need to break down. Thank you guys for watching, see ya!